Hi there, and welcome to Chimp Chat, a podcast aimed at helping you get the very best from your MailChimp account. Brought to you by those clever chimps at Chimp Answers, a MailChimp Pro partner. MailChimp email marketing is just what we do. Hi everybody, and thanks for joining us for today's episode of Chimp Chats. My name is Robin Adams. I am the Chief Chimp at Chimp Answers. We are a specialist email marketing and MailChimp marketing agency. And joining me, as ever, on the other line is the delightful MailChimp. What do I usually call you? I was going to say the MailChimp Supremo. That's usually what I end up. Yeah, Supremo. MailChimp Supremo, Vicky Cass. How are you doing today, Vicky?
I'm doing well, thank you. Yes, the weather's turned a bit, but yes, I'm doing well.
Let's cut straight to it, because I know that people don't tune in to listen to the banter. They come in for the advice and the guidance and everything. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to be talking about how you can make your emails look good. Talking about some of the things that you need to take into account when you're building your emails and actually getting them out. But I suppose one of the first questions that I always ask when I look at stuff like this is, how shall we say it? Does it actually really matter how an email looks? I mean, I get emails all the time from people who've got no design, who've got no graphics, images or whatever. So Vicky, first of all, does email design actually matter? Does it matter what it looks like?
Honestly, it doesn't matter as much as people think. I mean, you can send out a flashy email or a plain email. The point is, when someone opens it, they just want to read the content. They want to read what you have to say to them. It doesn't matter if it's flashy or just a simple black and white affair. All that matters is that when they open it, they engage with your content connects with them, and they read it and go, yeah, that's a good email. So what's in the email matters more than how it looks. I mean, I get emails all the time with all the flashy images, and sometimes I don't even enable the pictures. So all I see is just like broken image icon, text, broken image icon. So yes, content is definitely more important than flashiness and how it looks.
Couldn't agree more. It's one of the things that I kind of like preach whenever I'm speaking to clients and they're talking about how to make their emails look good. And I always say that, design should not get in the way of good content. And I jokingly say, and this is a message to all you guys who are out there listening at the moment, if you spend half as much time on the design as you do the content, you've got the ratios right. You should be spending twice as much time on what's in the email than you are in what it looks like. And that's something that I think is a real good principle you should take away. And another thing you also got to remember as well is that, again, considering the amount of time people seem to spend on making an email look good or whatever, the fact is that there's a load of things that need to happen even before someone gets to see the email. So, you've actually got to know that when an email is sent, first of all, you've actually got to get into the inbox. And obviously talked previously in last week's episode about deliverability and getting into the inbox. So that's the first thing that you need to do. You get into the inbox. Then once it's in the inbox, you actually need to get it read. Nowadays, I know I've got a lot of automated filters for emails that come in, and they go straight into separate folders. And that means that sometimes I don't actually read them. So, from that point of view, you've got to have a good subject line to actually get someone to open and engage. You've got to have a good email or a good reputation as an email sender. And all those are kind of like more important than, to some extent, what it looks like. Because if you don't kind of like tick the boxes for them, it doesn't really matter what the email looks like. No one's actually reading it. So always make some of that. Anything else, Vicky, just as an initial starting point?
I think, as well as trying to get into inbox, is trying to get into the right inbox. So, making sure that you're sending the emails to the right people. If you've got a database of, if you're a pet store owner, for example, you've got dog lovers and cat lovers, making sure that you send cat-related emails to cat owners and dog-related emails to dog owners. So don't just email everyone about dogs when they may not actually like them. So yes, as well as landing in the inbox, make sure you're landing in the right inbox so that they're getting the right content for them. So definitely, yeah, I think that's an important thing.
Definitely. So I suppose the first principle is it does come back like everything to having a plan and a strategy, segmenting your audience and understanding how it all fits together. So that's the first thing you've got to consider. But assuming you've got all that tied up, you've got a great subject line, you've got a great reputation, you're hitting the inbox every time, people are kind of like opening your emails, what do you need to do to make it look good? What are some general principles that someone can take away and go, if I put these in place, people are going to like reading my emails? So where do you want to start with, Vicky?
Well, let's start from the top because people tend to do this. When you think of an email, you think of, oh, I need a header image. They immediately think, oh, you need to do like a website. There's no need for that. So don't go overboard with images. Just the fewer images you have, the better. Because most of the time, email clients wouldn't display your images anyway. So it would just look like a broken image icon. I think I mentioned this before, where I get fancy emails and all I can see is a broken image icon, some text, a broken image icon. So yeah, don't go overboard with those. And also, if you think about it, newsletters, all the fancy ones, it's going to ping to the email client like Gmail that it might be spam or it might be too much marketing, so they might block you and you might not get into the inbox. So yes, use less images. And also, when you're using images as well, you need to consider how it's going to look on different screen sizes. And some email clients may not display it, some may do, some may put it into the left when you put it to the right. So yes, images, don't use too many of them.
Definitely, yeah. One of the things that I remember reading somewhere was that the more images you put into an email, the more likely it's going to trip a spam filter. So obviously, images matter.
Yeah.
Images can help. They'll, what was it? A picture tells a thousand. A picture tells the equivalent of 1,000 words of a story. So you want to be using images, but you want to not go over the top with them. Just use them where they're appropriate. Okay. And speaking of images, one image that you should definitely be using, certainly if you're in a business-to-business firm, or even just kind of like using your emails as marketing, is making sure that you've got your business logo on the email and ideally at the top. Something I've noticed a lot of the top internet marketers are actually doing now. It used to be that they would send just plain text emails. But what I've actually seen recently is a lot of them are now putting a logo at the top of the email. And that logo is kind of like a stamp of authority. It's a confirmation of who you are and that, kind of like you are who you say you are, as it were. So, having that proof that, kind of like this is, so when I send emails, there'll always be kind of like either Wendell the Chimp at the top or the logo at the top. And people will look at that and go, oh, this is coming from Chimpanzees. I know that brand. I'm familiar with it. So therefore, I'm much more likely to engage. So make sure that you use your logo at the top. So next thing, Vicky.
I would say making sure it's consistent with your brand. So I know some people may go, oh, I don't have brand colors or brand guidelines, but if you have a website, just have a look at that. Try to match the colors there. Or if you're posting in a certain color scheme on social media, try and match your colors to that. So wherever you're posting something externally, just try and make sure everything is consistent. So when people see your email, they go, oh, I recognize that because I've seen a social media post that looks like that, or their website that looks like that. So yes, having a consistent brand identity, colors, fonts, everything that just sort of flows and is seamless just improves your brand identity, and people recognize you almost instantly once they see your emails.
Exactly,
So
that's what you want.
consistent brand identity is a thing.
Definitely, it's one of the things you want. But obviously, one thing you want to make sure of when you're talking about that, and we get this question asked quite regularly in the Facebook group, is fonts. So people are going, oh, I'd like to use this font in my email. So they've got a real sexy font on their website, and they go, oh, right, well, I want to use that in my email. The problem with that is that a lot of email programs out there, the Outlooks, the Gmails, or whatever, if they don't have your sexy font installed in the system, it won't show. So what we kind of like recommend from that point of view is don't get overly complicated with fonts. I mean, obviously you can create, say, graphical images which have got a nice font in, which are actual images, but in terms of the text that you're putting in the email, use the fonts that MailChimp provide. The more complicated you get, the more likely you're potentially going to get yourself in a mess, and your email is not going to look the way you want it to. So when it comes to fonts, keep it simple. Okay, that's really, really important. So again, I've seen so many questions. How do I get this font into it? The response is you don't. You do use the fonts that have got, because it's much more important to get the email read than it is for you to get the right font and then get it to the other person, and they're never going to see that font because they don't have it installed. So that's one of the key things to remember. Right, what's next on the hit list?
I think this is one of the biggest actually, is call to actions. So having a button that people click, an obvious button, or links that people click, and links that stand out. So don't just sort of hide it in your footer or somewhere like that. So make it prominent, make it bold. Use those colors that you have on your website to make it stand out. I get some people say, "Oh, but my emails are not to drive traffic to my website. I have no sales page for them to go on." Encourage them to reply to your emails. Tell them to click here and reply to you. Just something that gets them engaging, clicking, to show that they are actually reading your emails. So yes, have a call to action. Have something that they can click on.
Definitely, and make sure that stands out. Kind of like make sure that it's on brand color. So if you've got buttons, your logos, whatever it is, if you want someone to take action, you almost need a big kind of like it's like a big arrow saying click here, do this. If you want someone to take the action, and a lot of time the emails that you're sending are trying to get someone to take action, well, you need to kind of like point at it and make it stand out. Otherwise, it's going to get missed. And that's not just for buttons. That's also for text. If you've got text in your, kind of like standard text that people can click on to go somewhere, make sure that stands out a little bit. Make sure that, kind of like you're basically highlighting that this is something, an action that someone wants to take. So definitely good advice there.
Sorry, Robin. Also on that point as well, to make it clear what that action is doing. So don't just go have a button that says click here. You could say click here to do this, or but make it obvious what that button should do. Just pretend that there are 5. Just make it very plain and simple that button is going to do this when they click on it.
That's really just I love that idea of treat them as a kid, treat them as they need to be spoon fed, or the lowest common denominator. So yeah, it sounds silly, but I remember when I remember doing a course a while back on landing page design, and they were saying if you've got a button that someone wants to click, have an arrow next to it. And I'm thinking, well, isn't it obvious that this is a button that needs to be clicked? And they were going, well, for a lot of people it is, but there's those people out there who don't realise that. Having an arrow saying press this button to submit or whatever would actually be a great idea. So yes, you want to make sure that those stand out. Right, next thing, and if you think we're actually kind of like going through the emails, we started at the top with the logo, and then we've talked about the text and the buttons and call to action. And the next thing I want to talk briefly about is having a signature in your email. This is actually, in my mind, something that a lot of people really forget. And that's email is actually a personal medium. You are sending an email from a person to a person. Even though it's from a business, it's still a person who's sending it. And I think that businesses who don't tap into that personal element, who send an email from admin at or info at or sales at, are actually missing out, because they're missing out on the opportunity to create a connection. And the signature that you put into the email is something that is going to really support that. So have an image of the person who's sending it. One little thing I do is whenever I'm creating emails for clients, I'll get a blank piece of paper. I'll write the name of the person in text, as it were, on the paper. I'll take a photo of that and I'll load it into the email, and it looks like a handwritten signature. It's a real cheap and easy way of doing it. But again, it just stands out a little bit. So make sure that if you are sending it from someone, try and add those little bit personal touches in. The idea of having a picture, I think, of a person who's sending the email actually is something that everyone should consider, because it does make the email more personal. Means that you're it feels like you're being treated as an individual, as opposed to just another number, as it were, or another email address. And I think that's something that's going to have a big impact, as it were. All right, so continuing down the email, what's the next bit, Vicky?
Oh, this is the very last thing, and that's the footer. So that's the thing at the bottom of your email that's always going to be there, no matter what you have in the body of the email. So that's usually a thing that contains your unsubscribe link, your physical address, and anything else you want to put in there that you think, they need to know, like your privacy policy could live in there as well. So you can customize this to your heart's desire, really. You can change your colors to match your branding. You can reduce the font size a little bit more so it doesn't overwhelm your main content. But the thing about that is to just keep it nice and short, nice and simple, and so that it doesn't really stand out too much. You don't want people to just go, oh, look, there's a red font over here. Just keep it simple, keep it small. As long as you have your unsubscribe link there and your address, and you'll be good to go. And if you don't have those things in there, when you send your email, MailChimp will add it on for you, and you do not want that because it's just going to be a plain, basic MailChimp thing added on at the end of your email. You want to customize that and make it on brand.
Definitely.
Yeah.
No, and it's just one of the things, probably one of my, when I receive emails from people, it's people who haven't taken the time to look at their footer. They just use the footer that MailChimp have given them and think, oh, that's going to be good enough. But, the fact of the matter is that as long as you've got a MailChimp unsubscribe link in there, and as long as you've got a physical address, because those are all parts of the T's and C's of, using MailChimp anyway, you can do whatever the hell you like in your footer. Add your social media, all those other bits and pieces that Vicky was saying, and make it, take ownership of it. If you've spent all your time on the rest of the email making it look good, logos, colours, and the other bits and pieces, and then you've ignored the footer, you're kind of like, well, what was the point of doing all those other stuff? It'll take 5 minutes to create a nice little footer design that you can use in all your emails. And I think that's certainly something you should kind of like look at. And I think, when you bring that all together, I think the key things that people are going to look at and, how shall we say, they need to take away from this is keep it on brand, but make sure that the design is not getting in the way. There are too many times where I've seen people who kind of like go over the top with the design of the email, and it actually takes away from the email. It undermines the content, undermines the message, makes it hard for people to know what to click on or whatever. So think of design as something that you delicately are adding to the content of the email and not the other way around. Okay? So we talked about images previously. I just thought one of the things I'd mention on it is, what about emails that have got no images in? So the old-fashioned plain text. So, I always jokingly say my favourite email that I ever get comes from one of my best buddies saying, "You playing golf this weekend?" It's got no images in. It's got nothing special in. It's all about who it's from, and it's all about the content. And I see a lot of people out there doing these plain text emails. So what's your view about these types of plain text emails, Vicky?
I think it's quite interesting, and it's very powerful for certain businesses. But if you're, say, an e-commerce brand, that's not going to do a lot for you because people want images to entice them. People want to see the product. So once you're up and running, you can maybe add a little bit of plain text because people already know what you already expect your emails to be good, and you can add a little bit more of a personal touch with plain text emails. But it's definitely not something that's right for every business. You need to look at your business and try and think of what your audience would want to see. And you can always test things, and if you notice that your engagement has gone down, change it again. If you're doing lots of images and your engagement goes down, change your plain text and just try things. But I think plain text can work, but it's not for every business.
No, I agree completely. And the thing is, what it does is it kind of like completely exposes the contents. It's kind of like it then all about the content. And to be quite frank, if you're not a copywriter, or you haven't got a copywriter or tab, or you're not comfortable writing just text emails, you might get a little bit exposed. So it's almost not that I'm suggesting you design to hide your lack of content, as it were. But if you are just making an email purely about the content, you've got to make it interesting and engaging. And that's where, the copywriters of this world who, the good copywriters can charge an arm and a leg for, writing email copy. That's because the copy is is what it's all about. It really is type thing. So if you are looking at plain text emails, try and make sure that you're doing them, how shall we say, you're doing them with a view of the content is the star, and invest in that content, because you've got nowhere to hide if that content isn't very good. So, one last couple, just basically wrapping up in terms of design. Is there anything else, Vicky, that you can think of that people need to be aware of when it comes to the design of the emails?
So we've covered creation. So once you've created it all, I think you need to test it. So there's no point you going, right, I've created this nice email in MailChimp and that's it, I'm done. No, you need to send a test email to yourself, see what it looks like on your phone, see what it looks like on your computer. Just make sure everything is arranged as you intended it to be. Because sometimes once you've designed your fancy email on your laptop, go into a mobile view and it's like, oh well, that's all gone into one column and doesn't look like what I expected, and you can go in and do some tweaks again. But yes, mobile is definitely one to look out for when you're testing your email.
Yeah.
And also, when you're in MailChimp, you may not necessarily want to send a test email. There is a preview tab as well. So you can preview how it looks on desktop or mobile before you actually send the email. So I think there is a limit on sending test emails. You don't want to go overboard on that. So use the preview as much as you can to start with before you start blasting yourself with test emails.
Definitely, preview is a fantastic tool, and also if you are using merge tags in your email, so say you're personalising and putting what someone's first name, one of the great little things that a lot of people don't use, I'm really surprised about this, is when you go in, so you've created your email, and in the top right you've got the button which says preview and test, and then I think you click on that, it'll show preview. When you click on preview, as Vicky's just said, you can see what the email will generally look like in a desktop or a mobile environment. And if you want to, you can use Inbox Preview, which is a tool that basically renders exactly what the email will look like in certain accounts. But that's not for everyone, and it is a paid tool, so you can have a look at that. But over on the right-hand side, you've got Enable Live Preview. And what that does is when you click that button, is it allows you to see how an email will look for each of the people who's receiving it. Now, I'm not suggesting that you go through every single link version there, because if you're sending it to an audience of 1,000, you're not going to look for 1,000 emails. But what it does allow you to do is to check that the merge tags are working. It allows you to make sure that it looks good. If you've got dynamic content in there, which is quite an advanced element, but something that can really be used for effective marketing, it'll allow you to see what the email looks like for each individual person. So, from that point of view, if you have got merge tags, you want to test them. You really, really want to test them. So, did we miss anything? Is that kind of like cover most of the bases with regards to graphics and making an email work? I say look good, but I think it's more making an email work, because an email can look good, but really, really ineffective. So it's all about having design supporting. Anything else that you want to add in, Vicky?
One of my pet peeves is text on images. So part of making your emails look good does not mean you go on Canva, put all your content on an image, download that and put that into MailChimp. So images should just be there to help to break up your text. Images should be there for layout purposes. They should not contain your actual content, so that when someone receives your email, they can actually see some text, not just a broken image icon. And it's not responsive either if you just put all your images on a text or your text on an image, because it wouldn't be sized on a mobile device. So do not put text on images unless it's just for layout and doesn't convey any meaning.
Love it. I love it when you get on your soapbox and you get passionate about this. Really, really gets my goat, as it were. We've all got. I've got a number of things, as it were, that fits in. One of mine is that personal nature. Is emails need to come from a person, not a business. So that's what I was talking previously about, making sure that the signature is actually in there, as it were. But I think for me, kind of like just wrapping up this whole conversation about how do you make an email look good, is you've got to understand what is the purpose of the email and what are you trying to do. In most instances, email is a mechanism for getting someone to take a next step. So you want them to visit your website, or you want them to book a phone call with you, or you want them to read a blog post. So it's all about these next steps that you want someone to actually take. And if your design is getting in the way and is not supporting those, then it's not helping. It's not actually moving you forward. My marketing philosophy is very simple. Know what the next step in the journey for someone is, and make it easy for them to take it. And when it comes to email, I see too many people out there who are starting out with email marketing who think that the way an email looks is something that's really, really important. So many people come to us. I'm sure you've had these conversations. A client comes to you and goes, oh, I want to really complicate, I want a new template. I want to have this and that, the other. And in actual fact, all they're doing, it's the old mutton dressed up as lamb. If they haven't got a content strategy, if they haven't got an actual plan of what they're doing with email, it doesn't matter what the email looks like, because, you know, kind of like the email is not going to work. So really focusing on the specifics of how the design can look, but make sure that it's congruent, it's on brand, but it's not over the top. It's in line with your print. And actually, the best emails I see are ones that have got a nice logo at the top. The color scheme matches the website. There's the text there. There's a couple of images in there. There's a personal sign off, a photo, and there's a nice colourful branded footer. It all sits nicely together. Those are the ones that work for me much better than the ones that have got, you know, more images than you can shake a stick at. So let's not go over that too much, as it were. Okay, so I hope you guys found that useful. If you've got any questions, so I know we've got a couple of people who are watching live, but if you have got any questions on email design and things that, you know, how you can make your emails look good within MailChimp, then please, you know, basically go into this video, add a comment, make sure that you tag either myself or Vicky, and we'll do our best to come back to you and answer on those. But like I said, design matters, but probably doesn't matter as much as a lot of people think. So, you know, just bear that in mind when it comes to email marketing. Right, so what we'll do now is we'll just have a quick bounce through to our regular news section, as it were. So just cover off a couple of bits and pieces that you kind of like, that you may not have heard, that are going to be going on around in MailChimp or in email marketing generally. And I think one of the things that is definitely worthwhile coming back to, I'm not sure we've got anything further to add, but if you didn't hear about this last week, Apple have upped the game when it comes to privacy in email marketing. And what they're doing in their new iOS 15, the new operating system, is they're going to be making it a lot harder for businesses to track opens, which basically means it's a lot harder for you to understand whether someone has opened your email or not, or whatever. And this is something now that has kind of like been bouncing along for a couple of weeks. I know certainly in our MailChimp partner Slack channel, it's been something that a lot of people discussed. A lot of the, you know, email marketing businesses, no, not just MailChimp, but ActiveCampaign, Klaviyo, a lot of the recognized brands have all come out with a statement on this, because obviously open rate tracking is something that we all do. We all, you know, one of those statistics people immediately say in the Facebook group is, oh, I've got an open rate of 25%. Is this good or bad? Now, we won't go into whether open rate is a valid tracking mechanism or not. That's a conversation for another time. In fact, actually, that would probably make a really good kind of like chimp chat, as it were, in terms of the statistics that you should actually be paying attention to when it comes to email marketing. So we'll mark that down for a future topic, as it were. But any further thoughts or any things that you've kind of like picked up in the last week or so on iOS 15, Vicky?
No further thoughts really. I think it's also a case of, if you're using open rates now, maybe to start segmenting your list and just have a benchmark of stats to use for when things do change. So at least you have a starting point and you're not just going into it completely blind. At least you know at some point in the year these people are opening my emails. So if you do use that, just try and get benchmark stats. Can't say the word now. Note it down now. Yeah, I think that's the only thing extra I had.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that it's top of the charts in terms of people's awareness at the moment, and it's not actually coming in until later on this year anyway. And from the sound of things as well, I read somewhere that
September, I think.
Might only be available on a paid plan or something like that. So if you're paying for iCloud or something in Apple, whatever. But I think the underlying message is for me is there's two things. One, I wouldn't say this is the tip of the iceberg, but this is not something that is going to go away. Privacy is at the forefront of people's minds now more than ever. Privacy of data, tracking, all that type of stuff. So I suppose the first thing is get used to it. You're probably going to see developments from Google and from Yahoo and from Hotmail and whatever that are going to be along similar lines. So from that point of view, open rate as a statistic, and I know at the moment I'm never a big fan of open rate as a tracking mechanism for how good or bad you're doing. That's going to reduce. And obviously that then balances off with the other side, which is, well, what can you track? And the one thing that you can track is clicks and activity. And I think I mentioned this last time. Make sure that when you're sending your emails, you're more focused on the actual results, the clicks. Like we were saying in the design, it was all about getting people to take an action. So one of the things that you can do to encourage people taking action is, as we said, have those call to actions brighter and bolder and standing out more. And if you haven't got a call to action on your email, then maybe now's the time to start building those in, because it's going to be a lot harder to understand and see whether people are engaging your content at a top level. And I think that's something that, if you're email marketing regularly at the moment now, you really want to kind of like take into account. You really want to have a think about this. So something worthwhile to do, bear in mind. One other thing that's just come out recently, which is a new beta test that MailChimp are doing. And some of you may have seen this come through, that it's really only happened in the last week, so chances are you may not have seen it. And that's that MailChimp are now making email templates that you can actually buy. And now this came out in the MailChimp partner group, and all the MailChimp agencies, and we all kind of like do a little bit of template design. We're like, well, you know, if they're doing this, where does that leave us, or whatever. My view on this is, again, it's a little bit of a storm in a teacup. The fact is that I think MailChimp is one of the few email programs out there that doesn't let people buy templates, or hasn't to this point, as it were. So, you know, so if you are looking for help from a templates point of view, there are a couple of, they're basic, they're a starting point, but they're probably something that would be worthwhile having a look at in the future. And actually, and I've literally just thought of this now, the only way you get access to MailChimp's full batch of templates on a normal account is if you upgrade to the standard essentials or standard plan. You don't have access to those anyway from a free plan.
Yeah.
So, you know, so there's not really a lot here, but it's really interesting to see that MailChimp are developing kind of like a little marketplace that will allow you as MailChimp users the opportunity to buy stuff. It'll be very interesting to see whether and how that could potentially move forward in terms of creating automations, for example, or customer journeys. Any thoughts on this, Vicky?
Yes. Oh, I think it's quite interesting, and that you've mentioned the customer journey and automations as well, because they are starting to have templates on that. So trying to guide you to say, start automation like this, or you want to automate this, here is how to start. So yes, it's getting more advanced. Like, I like it, but I also think that it's probably going to, if you're working with a client and they've bought a template, it might open up more support issues, but we'll see how that goes. And also, I think it's only for the new builder. So if you haven't moved across yet, it's probably not useful until everyone's on the new builder.
Exactly.
So we'll see how that pans out.
Yeah, the new builder, that's creating lots of noise in lots of people from a MailChimp point of view. Again, I will have to say, when everyone talks about it, I did go, but it's got the beta logo on. So the new MailChimp email builder, as it were. And there's the classic builder, and then there's the new design. That new one is still technically in beta. It's still called there, so it's still going through some teething problems. And yes, these designs that you can now buy are linked to that. But I suppose the one thing that I always take heart is that, you know, as a business that's completely focused on using and supporting people with MailChimp, it's always nice to see that MailChimp are actually continuing to develop and invest in loads of new areas and opening up new opportunities. You know, I'd hate to be sitting here thinking, well, you know, MailChimp haven't done anything for the last 6 months or 12 months. So, you know, whether I like or dislike what they're doing, I can't argue with the fact that they are spending time and effort investing in the platform and making it better. So I think that's really good to focus on. Cool. Anything else to add, Vicky, before we start wrapping things up this week?
No, just I was thinking about the templates actually, and one of the things I do see online, you know, when people talk about MailChimp is, oh, they've had the same templates for years. There's nothing new or innovative about it. So actually, this is a move in the right direction on that front. You can say, no, they have fancy templates now. You may have to buy them, but they have fancy templates now.
It's good. It's good. But then I turn, like I said, coming back to, I suppose, the theme of this, I started this email almost kind of like, how important are looks? You know, when it comes to email, how important are they? And yes, there are lots of things you can do to make your emails look better. And you do need to pay attention to it, because there's nothing that turns someone off more than an email that looks messy. You know, it's like, well, if you can't be bothered to make the email look good, what are you going to do with me as a client or whatever? So it's one of the key things to make sure. But don't go over the top. You know, design matters, but it doesn't matter anywhere near as much as the content and what you're trying to do with the email. And hopefully we're able to get that message across today. So, thanks very much for joining us again, Vicky. We will return next week. I might let you have a week off in a few weeks' time, as it were. But you're too good. You've got lots of great stuff, and I, kind of like always find our conversations very enlightening and good. So, thanks for joining us again. And you'll be back next week, along with myself, to
Oh,
talk
thank you for
about
having me.
subject lines. So, like we mentioned previously,
Ooh.
yeah, subject lines, they matter because if you do a really bad subject line, people ain't going to open the email. And if they're not opening the email, what was the point of sending it in the first place? So we'll be touching on all things related to subject lines and almost, I would say, let's change it from just subject lines to how do you get someone to open your email? So we'll not talk about deliverability. We covered that last week's episode. So getting into the inbox. And today we've talked about what happens when they open the email. But next week we're going to focus on how do you actually get an email opened, and subject lines are a big part of that equation. But for now, thanks very much, Vicky, again. Look forward to seeing you next week. And everyone else, thanks for listening, and we'll catch up with you very soon indeed. Cheers for now.
Bye.